right, this is Thursday, March the 5th, and I'm together here with Roger Davidson to talk about his memories of farming where his grandfather had homesteaded. First of all, though, I'm going to get you to sign a release of, you know, that we're taping you,
Okay.
and we could be using some of this at different times.
Sure.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'll grab
Yeah.
that. And my name is Janice Siegfried, and as I said, it's March the 5th, and basically our conversation will be about your grandfather's homesteading place, how it passed on to your dad and your uncles, and then when you took over, and from them, and so on and so forth. So we talked about already that in 1905 he came
Yeah.
and homesteaded here. And was it on? Now, can you explain where that farm is? What are the?
Yeah, well, it was in the RM of Morris 312, and it was southwest 32, 26, 31, west of 2. That was the legal area that it was. He came out with Alec Murray at that time. They were given the opportunity, as long as they lived on the land for a year, to have that as their homestead. So they came out from Ontario. That's where my grandfather was from. So they left a well-developed farm out there to come out to the Bald Prairie with.
Can you just imagine?
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that they didn't have a vehicle for the first
No.
5, more than 5 years. They had to walk everywhere.
Yeah, there were stories that my father told me of my grandfather walking for days. Sorry.
No, that's, well, and I read somewhere that he walked all the way to Hanley
Yeah.
because it was the closest place for him to get groceries, and then to carry them back
Yeah.
walking. Now from Hanley, it just seems like that was the closest place.
Yeah, well, Watrous was not
But it probably-
quite developed yet.
No.
They had Mandel House, or Mandel is what it was called, I guess,
Yeah.
before it was Watrous, and there was very little there, so.
Björndal had a store, but his
Yeah.
store wasn't open yet at
No,
that time.
No, not then. So, yeah, my grandfather put on skis. We still had his skis at the farm. And in the winter, he would ski all the way to Hanley with a little sleigh and get whatever they need, necessities, bring them back to the sod shack. So, yeah, he was made of better stuff than I am.
Well, and I think, okay, then he got married to, then when, what did I write down here, in 1913 they got married, and I'm thinking of myself they had 12 children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 13 actually.
13 actually.
Yeah. There was, I gotta think, there was 4 of them that passed. 2 of them when they were really young, and then 2 of them when they were in their, I remember, if I can remember correctly, Dad said they were in like 1 or 2, but that's kind of when the Spanish flu came through, and there was also, they had, I forget what Dad said, there was some other chronic disease that
Yeah.
was going around at that time that they both got, so.
Well, and then there was no medical staff
No.
here to help them.
No, so, yeah, no, they had
Okay.
9 kids left from that.
And I know that they did a lot of the work on the farm, but their grandmother, looking
Yeah.
after all these kids, and
Yeah,
all the work that a woman had to do.
yeah, no, that's right. I remember Dad saying that my grandmother would work relentlessly from morning till night, because she had the crews that would come off the CPR line that would help with the thrashing in the fall. So they'd be up at 4 in the morning getting prepared with the horses and the machines, and And then the crew would come in for breakfast, and Dad said she'd spread a full meal out. It was potatoes and meat and eggs and what have you. And so then they'd go out and work, and in the meantime, Dad said it'd be hotter than heck in the kitchen. And she'd be cooking away in that heat all day.
And not a big house.
No, it was, Grandpa was fortunate enough, he took when they left the sod shack, Grandpa and Alex decided to go different directions. My grandfather went east and Alec went west, up the rail line. And there was a house there, boy, I'm just trying to think of who's, Ketchison, that's what it was a home that was, there it is right there.
Yeah.
E.R. Ketchison built, and so he bought that, and that's where they lived, yeah, so.
And for them, that would be quite luxurious
Yeah.
after living in a sod house.
Yeah, absolutely. Dad used to talk about the parlor and how
Yeah.
that's where they used to have
Yeah.
the guests over and entertain everyone was in the parlor, yeah.
Yeah.
But the kitchen, it was a back kitchen, and they did, in fact, that kitchen, Dad kept it and moved it over to our yard where I grew up, as we used it for an accessory building, and it ended up being a feed storage building
Okay.
for the cattle, but it was still intact, so you could still see, some of the,
Well built
yeah, from the remnants of what was in the
of
house.
everything else.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so the crew would come in and they'd eat and they'd go out, they'd work, they'd come back at dinner time or lunchtime and they'd eat again. And it wasn't small meals. They'd be
No.
preparing these large meals, and then in the afternoon when it got really hot, Dad said that Grandfather, when he wasn't under, trying to get the crop off or under stress or whatever, he'd go lay down in the cool shop on the dirt floor, catch a nap in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And then they'd go at it till late at night again, because they had to get the horses all in and then fed and bedded
Yes.
down for the night, and then they'd go in and have their supper. So it got to be long days. Yeah, yeah.
I can't imagine as a woman doing all of that.
Oh, yeah.
But you did it because
Yeah,
there was no other way.
No, that's what they had to do to survive, so, and raise a family.
And raise that family.
Yeah.
Wow. So, did your dad just grow up and sort of take over, and your uncles now? Tell us about the arrangement with your dad and your uncles.
Well, Sandy was the oldest in the family. He was a
Mhm.
twin to his sister Mary. And so Grandfather pulled him out of school in grade 6, I believe it was, to help him farm. So that's as far as Sandy had for an education, was grade 6 in the country school at Plassey. And then he started working, he was plowing since he was probably 12.
Mm-hmm.
He had to learn how to plow a straight line. And so my grandfather had him with the horses right away. That's why Sandy had such a love for horses and cattle, because he was with them all the time. So he basically kind of started with Grandpa farming, and then Arthur was the second in line, and Uncle Art helped out too as well for quite a while. But Art didn't have as much an interest in the farm as other things. Like, he was more mechanically inclined, so he kind of was doing that part of it for the farm. And then Doug was right behind him, and so Doug and Sandy were farming with Grandpa. And then Grandpa's health let go. He ended up in North Battleford, and not very well. So they continued to farm, and then Dad just kind of, Dad actually went off to school. He took an architecture course up in Saskatoon.
Oh, really?
And he was going to go into that field. He was offered a job at Moose Jaw at Balls Lumber, I think it was called, up at that time. But yeah, he declined it, came back to the farm because his mom wasn't well either. She ended up with tuberculosis after all that hard work.
Yes.
And so he had to look after her. And so he looked after her, and Dad did most of the inside housework, right? So he was cooking and cleaning, and he helped pick up, because all his sisters were older and they had gone off. Helen became a teacher, and Marge got married, Jean got married, and So all his sisters had kind of, they helped when they were there, but then they took off to
Sure.
make their own lives. So Dad looked after his mom until she passed, and yeah, he just kept on farming. He gave up that. He still built, in fact, Dad was the guy that built all the bins, and the houses, and the Quonsets, so he was the carpenter of the family. Doug was the welder and mechanic, and Sandy was the one that looked after all the livestock. So with the three of them working together, that's how they kept it going.
And they worked together till they retired, didn't
Yeah,
they?
they did, yeah. It was Davidson brothers for the longest time.
Yeah.
They had to buy the farm because my poor grandfather didn't make enough. He made a few errors in farming at the time. If Dad said if he had just grown oats and hadn't been so stubborn, he would have made money with the CPR line, because they were building it at the time and they needed oats for the horses, right?
Oh, for sure. Okay.
But Grandpa was stuck on his red wheat from down east, and the wheat didn't do so well for him. He continued to grow it, and he did grow oats eventually, but it was too late at that point, of course. So, and then they went through the Depression, and I
Yes.
remember Dad talking about the 30s and how bad it was. How they had at night, they had to wet down cloths and put them in the windows to capture any dirt and under the doors and stuff so they could breathe, because it would just be so dusty.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the wind would be so strong. He said in the wintertime, he said you'd wake up with frost on your sheets, on your blankets, and he said you daresn't put your feet on the floor because it was so cold.
Yeah.
But then in the summer, of course, when it was no rain, it just went on and on and on like that. So Grandpa, actually, it got so bad that he lost the land to taxes, and so the boys had to actually buy it back again. So so the farm was bought multiple times, because once the boys, Sandy and Doug, were to their retirement age, I came into the picture of wanting to farm, and so I basically bought it from them. So our farm was bought 3 times.
Yeah.
The same amount. It never, I mean, they expanded, because they started off with just the home quarter and a few quarters close by. As their neighbors, there was Moros that were south, and they dwindled out, and there was there was a few that were south of us there, and east and west. They kind of just dwindled out, and they offered it to Dad, Doug, and Sandy, and they would buy quarters at a time just to expand the farm a bit. I'm just trying to think of some of the names. There was Torgerson's. We bought some of their farm, and boy, there was a few places anyways, and the names that were probably in this book that we bought land from, and because they were doing poorly from the 30s. Just people lost their land to taxes basically. So Eddie Darmond, that was the other one. I remember that, because Eddie Darmond, Dad said, came from England, and he raised sheep, and so he was trying to raise sheep
Oh, okay.
out by Devil's Lake, because we
Yeah.
had a piece of
Okay.
ground out there. It was, I guess, backtracking a little bit, how my grandfather met my grandmother. She was a Craig, and George Craig and her were brother and sister, and the Craigs farmed down by Devil's Lake, so they were fairly close.
Okay.
So that's how they ended up meeting each other. And then my grandfather's brother, Andrew, came out, and he was farming down in that area too, kind of where Headlands had farmed. But he lost his arm to an accident with a threshing machine, so he ended up having to farm the rest of his life with one arm, and that was very difficult. I mean, he made things work for him. He put his bins on, Dad sit on hillsides and stuff, so he could open it up and fill the grain box, but he still, Dad said he was always in pain. That's all he remembers. Yeah, so I didn't know him. I came along kind of late in life. By the time I was born in 1967, my grandfather and my grandmother were both gone on my dad's side. So I grew up with Doug and Sandy and Dad.
Yeah.
That's the ones I knew. Right? But Sandy would always tell me stories about the horses and the oxen. I got a picture of my grandfather sitting on the plow with 2 oxen. He's got his hat in his hand, waving it, and whipping the other one, trying to make a go of it.
So was it your grandfather then that got involved with the horses?
Yeah,
Clydesdales,
he
it
got
said.
yeah he got into the Clydesdales and Broncs. He crossed the two. He had purebred Clydesdales, and then he would bring in a bronc and breed them to get the spunkiness in the horse, because he said the Clydesdales were good, but they didn't have the get up and go sometimes.
Oh, okay.
So he put a little bronc in there to give him spunkiness.
So this interest in horses and being related to the Murrays, is that how Vic got interested in it too then? Or?
Yeah, they were very close, the family. They always had Christmases together. They'd go back and forth. Dad remembers going over to his Aunt Barbara's place,
Mhm.
and that's where I guess Vic and what's Brian's dad's name? I can't remember. But anyways, they'd go over there, and they had the nice brick house. Dad remembers that quite readily. So.
From the history book, your grandfather was very interested in being very community-minded
Mm-hmm.
and getting things going as part of the school and the wheat pool and,
Yeah.
and different things like that. He was very instrumental in some of that.
Yes, and in fact, I've got one of his grain tickets mounted on my wall in the
Oh, how
basement
nice.
from the Young pool.
Wow.
It shows it has a grain ticket, and it's one of the coolest memories that I've got. And then I've got some of his horse awards that he won, and he would show all sorts of livestock. Horses were his main thing, but he also had pigs. So he's got lots of awards for gilts and sows and
Really?
yeah. Oh yeah, my
You
basement
had a
wall's
lot
covered.
of interests and a very ambitious person, I would think
Oh,
then.
yeah. He loved, he liked the communities. He used to come to Watrous. Like I said, he'd come here and sit at the back of the grocery store, one of the grocery stores, and he'd listen to his hockey games on the radio with the boys. But he really liked Young. Young was kind of his
Oh, sure.
town. He'd go that
Mhm.
direction.
Yeah.
So he was well known in Young. He had 2 names. He was called Jack and John. His name is John,
Mhm.
but they used to nickname him Jack. So Dad said he spent a lot of time in Young, and I think it was probably because Alec Murray too would have him go. And then Plassey was going west, right, on the CPR line. So he'd haul the grain to Plassey because we were very close to Plassey. It was right there. And then we had Leslie's were right north of us by a
Mhm.
mile and a half. So there was old Alan Leslie and Alec Murray and my grandfather, and they had a friendship going for years there.
And that's how they all had horse interest.
Yeah, they all had horse interest. In fact, Alan Leslie and my grandfather would go down east together to the Toronto Fair, and they'd show their horses off in the parade. So there's pictures of that.
That amazes me in that day and age that they would do that.
Mm-hmm. Like it took
To
a
take
long.
the train
Yeah, they took the train. They'd load
with
up.
the horses.
Yeah. Sandy was part of that. He remembers. I remember him telling me how he'd help Grandpa load up the horses, and they'd throw all their stuff in. And I actually still have the trunk that they went to the Toronto Fair in. I kept that part. It still has the smell of the horse hides in it, and the saddle gear, and yeah, it's pretty big actually. It's got rope handles on it.
Yeah.
And it was always full. It was always in Sandy's basement, and it was always full of the horses, different things that they had.
Sandy never got married, did he?
No, he never.
And so
did.
he didn't have a woman say, you can't have that here.
No, that's right. He kept everything. I actually had the saddle, the first saddle that he ever bought. It was a gopher saddle from Minnesota. That's where they're manufactured, and I ended up selling that at our farm sale. I just didn't have a place to put it. It was so big. I almost wish I had kept it and put it here now, but it would have been nice.
Yeah.
Oh well,
For
there's still things that I have, I found it was kinda neat, cause I took over Doug and Louise's house.
Yes.
That was the first house that my dad built. When my mom and dad met, they built a new house and all. My mom and dad and the two brothers, Doug and Sandy, lived in the basement, mom and dad lived upstairs. And then mom got tired of that, so dad said, okay, I'll build another house across the roadway.
Okay.
Well, it was actually built in the same yard, and then they moved it across
Oh,
to the other road, across the road. And then after that, they built Sandy a house, much later, mind you. But because he stayed in the basement when Doug and Louise got married. So, yeah, I guess my mom and Louise kind of looked after Sandy through the years,
yeah.
feeding him and, you know, making, the boys always, they were always together, working together and stuff, so they looked after him, and he was never.
And you were the only grandson.
Yeah, I was the only, well, no, I wasn't,
Oh.
because Arthur had a son,
Oh, okay.
but I was the only one that lived here.
Lived here.
Yeah. Arthur's son, Murray, was older than I was. He was about the same age as my oldest sister, Kathy. So he
Okay.
would have been 13 years older than me. He's gone now too. He died of cancer. But my uncle Art moved to London, Ontario. He moved back home basically.
Mm-hmm.
He worked on sewing machines for years. He was a Singer sewing machine repairman. That's what he did. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's what he made his living at in
That's
London,
so,
Ontario.
That's so interesting.
And then his son ended up cleaning high-rise windows. That's what his job was. But yeah, no, so I wasn't the only heir. There was Murray, but no interest in farming whatsoever. With me, it was just second nature, I guess. I just grew up there. That's what I thought I was going to do. But my mom said, no, you better go get something else, just in case. You just never know.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was always thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can see that.
yeah. So she said, no, I don't want you just to rely on farming, because you just never know. She said, you will get yourself something else too to have as backup, and I'm glad I did, because that's what I'm on backup right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we tried farming. Denise and I moved out to the farm to help Dad in 1996. Because that's the year Doug finally decided to call it quits. He was in his 70s at that point. And he said, that's enough. And so I approached him and Louise and Sandy about buying their portion of
Mm-hmm.
farm out there. So we did that, and then Dad and I farmed together from 96 till 2000. And that's, well, I guess 2001, and then he had his heart attack in the winter 2001, and then I said to him, I said, do you really want to try and do this again? Because he was in very good health at that point. And he said, no, if you found somebody to rent it, that's good. So I ended up renting it to the Murray boys,
Mm-hmm.
Ross and Scott and Brian were the ones that actually took it. So I still kept it in the family.
Yes.
For as long as I could, and then we rented it for quite a few years up until 2013, and then Dad and I made the decision that Mom's health wasn't good at that
No.
point, so Dad said he said he just couldn't look after the business end of it anymore, trying to get somebody to look after renting it and getting cash out of it, and it was getting to be too much. And I said, well, this is the opportune time to look at selling the farm, because prices were decent at that point, and guys were getting a decent return on their investment, and I'm kind of glad I did.
That's
6 years
timing
later,
was good, yeah.
6 years later, I'm glad we did, and Dad says I'm glad you did too. It was hard to let go. It was a struggle. Dad, for him, he didn't even want to come out for the first little while. Denise and I, it took us, and that's when, I guess that's probably when we found most of the history in the farm, is when we started cleaning up.
Yes.
It's when you find everything. There was things there. I had a scale that my grandfather had in the Quonset that he used to use to weigh the hogs before he took them to market, so he knew what he was going to get for the price before they got there, because in those days you had to be.
Good businessman.
You had to be on the ball, because people would take advantage of you. And so he would weigh them, and then he'd put them on the train, and away they went to Saskatoon. So I had that scale. I sold it at the sale. Gosh, I actually had, and this is one thing, I don't think a lot of people even know how to measure out an acre, but my grandfather he had made it, and it was to measure off an acre, so he knew where his lines were. And he had made this thing, it's 16 feet wide, and you make so many rotations with it, and it pivots. And you'd mark it, and you go a mile
Yeah.
at 16 feet is an acre. So he had this thing, and he would just mark it off as he walked.
Yeah.
So they'd walk. Like, that was the biggest thing. They walked and walked. I guess that's why it wore them out. Because they'd walk behind the plows, and they'd walk to mark off their land, and they were always walking somewheres.
In a lot better shape than some of us are.
Yeah, I think so. And the farm, I still, when I moved out there, things were run down quite a bit. When my grandfather's original farm site was actually our bin yard where Sandy's house was. That's where the original Ketchinson's house was. And then the barn was just down the hill from there. All that was gone, of course, when I was born. But the boys had built a great big cement wall in the 50s into the side of the hill, and that's where the cattle were.
Okay.
I remember that as a kid, because I was always warned don't walk on the roof, and it was poles that they put across, and then they put straw over top, and that was a shelter for the cattle and the pigs.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then as it progressed, they built a corral, and then they built barns, and it was just a progressive going. That's all I remember as a kid. Dad was always building something. It was never, you were never done. Like the farming thing, you do your crop.
And he was improving all the time.
Yeah, like I mean, all the time that the crop was growing, as a kid, I remember helping Dad build bins. That's what I did, nailing the floors. I was a horrible carpenter. My dad wanted me to be a carpenter, and I'm left-handed, so it didn't go well.
That's why you had your house built.
Yes. I learned a lot, mind you. Dad
Yes.
did show me a lot, but we built a lot of those bins out there. They were all wooden at the time.
Yes, yeah.
Our first set of steel bins didn't come out until the late, oh gosh, it would have been 78, 79 was the first West Steel Roscoe steel bin that we got.
Really?
Yeah, everything before that was wooden.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and we would build cribs every year in the fall because we didn't have enough of the wooden bins built, so we'd make a wooden crib and then just throw a tarp over top of it. I remember doing that as a kid too. So.
And so when did your dad retire then and move to town?
They made that decision, it would have been 2002. That was after his health was
Okay.
not very good after his heart attack, and he was trying to recuperate, and it was just too much for Mom
Yeah.
out there, and so they thought it best to maybe look at getting a place in town.
Yeah.
So by 2003, they were into their
Yeah.
new home, RTM, that they moved into town.
That's good though.
Yeah, and then my sister and her
You have
husband.
two sisters.
Yeah, my second oldest sister, Cynthia, and her husband came out to the farm
Right.
and lived in Mom and Dad's house. And they were there for, I want to say, 6 years. I
Okay.
believe it's about 2008, 2009. Yeah, it would have been 2009, I think. And then they ended up moving back to Saskatoon. So we had all of the farmyard in the family up until about 2010. And then things started to separate. Mom and Dad's, where I grew up, Mom and Dad's yard was sold off to Reifelsheid's son.
Oh.
So he moved out there and lived for a little while in that yard. And then I ended up rebuilding the inside of Sandy's house and renting it out to whoever I could find to have a little income too as well.
And then you moved into town what year? When did you sell?
2013 we sold the farm in June.
2013.
June of 2013. And Denise and I moved into Watrous again for the second time. Because we did live here when we were first married for 7 years. But that would have been August of 2013 we moved into Watrous.
So how did you find out, or how did they find out that your farm was a heritage farm?
It's recorded.
And-
Yeah, they knew. It was in the records, Saskatchewan records.
Okay, so that's how people found out if
Yeah.
it was.
They were sent a letter, actually, Doug, because at that point, 2005, I think was a heritage year, 1905 to 2005. At that point, Sandy's mind was starting to go.
Okay, yeah.
So they sent the letter to Doug, and then Doug, actually, I believe Doug has the plaque. I think Louise still has it.
Oh.
Yeah, they didn't, I haven't seen it.
I haven't
But
seen
I've-
Louise for so
yeah.
long. Is she still in Watrous?
As far as I know, she's in Jubilee Court, yes. I haven't seen her for a while
I will
either.
go and see her.
But I do believe she's got a plaque that they sent out, and I was presented, you know what, I was presented with I do have something, when they had our centennial, or centennial in
Yeah.
Watrous, I was handed
I know Linda Leslie did it.
some kind of a
display.
scroll or some sort that
Okay.
was just a representation of
Yeah.
having a heritage farm. Yeah, I still have it. I know I have it somewhere. One of the other things I thought was kind of cool, I meant to mention when I moved into Doug Louise's house, I found up above in the floor joists, there was stuff that was stuffed up in there. Because that house was actually built out of the remnants of the old barn I was telling you about that got tore down. So when I looked at the floorboards in my house, I could still see markings of straw and what have you.
Really?
Yeah. But anyways, tucked up in the floorboards was an old RM map, an original RM map still in the tube. And I had it for years and years and years. And Denise, about 3-4 Christmases ago, took it and got it mounted for me in a frame.
Nice.
So it has everybody's name on that map that had a quarter and a homestead. It's marked on there. Everybody that Dad mentioned is on that map. Yeah.
That's wonderful to have.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
So-
And it's not hard to keep.
No, I've got it. They
Yeah.
mounted it in a frame
Yeah.
for me, so hopefully it stays in good shape. As long as the air doesn't get at it, it should be okay.
Should be.
But it's better than being rolled up in a tube.
Yes.
I'm glad I found it
I'm
because,
glad you did too.
yeah.
So maybe we can even get a copy
Oh, yeah,
made.
yeah, yeah.
So then you wouldn't have to put we'd like to have something here on display to show that yours is a heritage farm.
Mhm.
And
Actually, that would be a great thing for in here because it would show everybody's heritage farm. I should
Yeah.
just donate it to you is what I should do.
well, no, that's yours.
No, but I
we
mean,
can get
it's,
a copy.
yeah. It would be nice to have it so where it would sit,
Absolutely.
so everybody could see it. I think
Yeah.
I think it's everybody should see it
Yes.
because there's not just me,
Yes.
right? That's everybody that was around us and there's,
The
I can't
Leslies
believe-
and the Murrays and
oh,
all
there's so many people.
Headlands.
Every quarter has a person's name on it. So there's people that we knew of or heard of have long gone, dissipated
sure.
from this.
That would be so good for us to
Yeah,
have,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
You have given me such an interesting interview
Oh.
and so much packed into a little bit of time. I just appreciate you coming and spending an
welcome.
evening here, Roger.
Yeah,
This has been good.
Yeah.
And it helps that I've worked with Denise
yeah,
and knew what was happening in your life a lot of times.
yeah, that's right.
Because Luke wouldn't have been interested in farming anyway to pass it on
No,
to him.
he loved the farm. My kids
For
loved
sure.
the farm growing up there,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not in his blood.
No.
No, he's, the newer kids now, unless that, well, I look at some of them like MacArthur's and the ones that have been here for years and years, like Brennan and those that
Yeah.
have taken it over, but farming's changed. It's not
It's,
like this.
No.
It's not as hands-on as it used to
Yes.
be, like in the dirt. Now it's more on paper or it's all on electronics, right?
Wow,
It's
yeah.
more, you have to be more of a business
It's more of a business, yeah.
person, yeah. I mean, you still had to back then, of course, because I don't know how these guys would survive. The, one of the things I should mention too is I still have the original double gauge, double barrel 10 gauge shotgun that my grandfather, it came with the house, A.R. Ketchison's house. That gun has got a 36-inch long barrel on it. I still have it.
Wow.
That was one of the things that was in my uncle's house, and I asked Dad if I could have it, and yeah, oh, it's beautiful. It's all Damascus barrels. It's a beautiful gun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That just,
But they
all those
used
little
it, Dad
things.
said they'd sit, when they were in that mud shack, they would sit, because we had a great big 20-acre slough that would divided Rowan's and ours, and my grandfather would sit on the bank, him and Alec Murray, and shoot geese. And that's what kept them fed, rabbits and geese, that's what they ate. Dad said for that whole time they were out. It's like, oh man, tough. They were tough.
well, if you can think of anything else, just let me know and we'll add
Sure.
it to this interview, or we will make it part of the display
Okay.
that we put up for
Mhm.
for the summer. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome, thank you.
This has been so good. Did you hear a lot of it?
For sure. Yeah, I heard it all. In fact, that printer started going there at the end, but anyway, that should be, yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah,
That's,
you're welcome.
It's good.
That's really great.
It wasn't all detail, it was interesting things of your memories, and that's what we
Yeah.
wanted in this kind of an interview.
Yeah.
I can tell that you did a lot of thinking before you came here, and a little bit of,
Actually, I'd just been there
yeah.
for years. Like
Yeah.
Once you start talking.
Well,
it
this
just
is what
comes
I was
in.
thinking, once you got
Yeah.
going on it, and,
Yeah, and Dad's got way more than I've got, but
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, you remember quite a bit of it. I think we had, and I guess the memories are there. I still have the old Harrow cart. That's what's in my front yard. That
Oh, yes,
That's
yes.
the wheel. That's the old Harrow cart that they used
I
to use.
thought it must have been
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, I kept that. It's the only thing that Denise would let me bring into town.